Healing Light takes you on a journey where you'll explore the nuances of energy. You'll visit the angelic realms and study the ancient wisdom and teachings of spirituality. We want you to reach within and discover the magnificent being that you came here to be. We help shine God's divine healing light by bringing love, light, and blessings into your world. And now, here is the host of Healing Light, Terry Van Horn.
I thought what I would do is talk about one of my favorite subjects, which is about crystals. Now, for those who don't know me as well, I do a tremendous amount of work with crystals. I work with them and heal with them. I connect with them in a lot of different ways, even intuitively, quite often. And crystals are an amazing tool for us to work with. And, I ended up writing 2 books about crystals, explaining in the first one how and why they work for us, which is what we're going to talk about today. And then the second one is called The Mystery of Crystals. And that one is really more about the advanced, really high vibrational stones. But for today, we're going to talk about the magic of crystals. And one of the first questions that I always get from people is, how did you get so into crystals? That's a very hard question for me to answer, because I think that my initiation into crystals was probably about the first time as a child that I actually walked outside. I picked up rocks constantly. And then when we went somewhere on vacation, there were rocks. I always had one. There was a growing pile of rocks on the side of our house where I was always collecting them, and my mom would go and dump them outside of the house. But I always picked them up. There was something about them. And I'm not saying that I picked out like really pretty pieces. I just picked out rocks and brought rocks with me all the time. I couldn't walk anywhere without seeing some that really got my attention, and it really just kind of struck me as being special and pretty in their own way. I'd see shapes in them, and I'm talking about plain old brown, river rocks. I had a huge pile of these things. And I didn't know one from the other. I just knew that as a kid, I was always picking these things up. And I was always told to take them outside. But as I got older, then my infatuation changed a little bit and kind of went into gemstones, where I was collecting, I would go and buy jewelry with all different stones. To me, diamonds were boring, they're great for like extra little sparkle, but, that wasn't the main thing for me. I liked all the other colored stones. So, once I was like in my 20s and working out on my own and doing things, I started collecting jewelry with gemstones. And it was really kind of a little bit of a challenge sometimes, because really about the only thing you could get were sapphires, rubies, or emeralds or amethyst. There weren't a lot of ways to get and use just regular gemstones in jewelry. Then I discovered that sapphires come in every color. So then that kind of that fixed me for a while. And then it finally transitioned into actually collecting the stones. And one of the places that really got me even more hooked, and I'm going to place all the blame right here, right now, on the Houston Museum of Natural Science. Now, I was spoiled growing up in Houston. We have a lot of culture in Houston. And the Natural Science Museum has tremendous exhibits, and they've upgraded them so often, particularly when it comes to stones. And I remember the first time that I walked in there, and there was an amethyst geode that was probably about I think it's about 5 feet tall. But as a kid, and with it sitting on the platform, it looked like it was 10 feet tall. And I was hooked for sure. And then when you go and look at all of these exhibits, and these stones are just displayed in such exquisite lighting, and you see their colors and their depths. Well, I was hooked. I was completely addicted and have been ever since. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but whenever you start collecting stones, a lot of times people don't entirely get it. Sure, you can say, well, it makes me feel good to hold this one. I mean, if somebody picks up a piece of amethyst or rose quartz, that is going to make you feel good. Those stones are excellent stress relievers. They're very relaxing. As a matter of fact, amethyst is so relaxing that it will help you get rid of headaches, and it can help with your insomnia. If you have problems sleeping, just grab a big old chunk of amethyst and put that in the bedroom, and you'll sleep like a baby. But people who don't understand crystals really have a hard time with a lot of this. And, I've known some. As a matter of fact, my husband didn't quite understand the whole crystal thing whenever we got married several years ago. And I realized I was in a huge bind because we were actually in the car on the way to a big fair where my whole intention of going was I wanted to go to a crystal shop there. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've got 45 minutes to explain all this. How am I going to justify that I am not certifiably insane because I want to go out and buy crystals? Well, fortunately, I knew enough about science and physics to be able to pull it off. But afterwards, I started really getting into the science and the history of crystals so that I could help other people understand a little bit more about them. And that's how I came up with the book, The Magic of Crystals. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. So let's get started with the very beginning. Now, crystals and gemstones have been used by cultures since the beginning of time. And I don't mean just the beginning of recorded time, I mean like way before that as well. So, humans have been using them forever for a lot of different things, and we are going to talk about that. Now, for those who want to give you a hard time about if you're doing crystal things and somebody starts, doing all these Bible quotes and, that crystals are bad and, I don't know, you're worshiping something weird, here's a little response that you can give to them. It's not mean. It's very nice, loving, and factual. Crystals were mentioned in the Bible over 200 times. They're mentioned as being in breastplates for protection, as ornaments, and as amulets. And they described spectacular crystal cities that were described to be in heaven and on earth. We have kings in the Bible who did not go into battle unless they had their huge breastplate with stones all in it for protection. And, that's just in that one culture. Now, the ancient Egyptians, boy, they were really big into stones. They used them as adornments. They had them in breastplates. They had them in beautiful, beautiful jewelry. And they also had, small pieces of crystals and, carvings that were wrapped into the gauze whenever they were mummified. They were, charms and amulets that helped with the journey into the afterlife. Now, we have, references with Native Americans, Mayans, Aztecs, African natives, Celts, the Aborigines. Every single culture has used crystals and stones in some aspect of their life, not just using it as flint or hitting each other on top of the head with them. Now, we also have a lot of crystal usage in what we're considering to be mythology, like Atlantis and Lemuria. Now, Atlantis was believed to be like almost like a high-tech crystal city, and they used crystals extensively for energy. And then they kind of overdid it, and everything kind of pretty much got blown to pieces. Lemuria used them tremendously as well, but on a different level. They connected with the crystals and they used them in healing and connecting with the earth and nature a lot more. I'm also in the process of writing a book about all that too. Now, but the thing is, with crystals, just like everything else, they're energy. They vibrate at different frequencies. You know, energies that are in the mineral kingdom, in nature are all called universal energies. And they're all connected. I mean, if you need to think about it in another way, just think about it like we're all atoms and molecules. And they're all these little, electrons and protons and neutrons vibrating and circling around. That's energy. Everything's made of that. So the stones, they have their own frequency. And each one has a different one, just like, everything that we have and use has a different frequency. Let's face it, concrete definitely has a low vibrational frequency. I mean, it's thick, it's heavy, iron, same way. It's thick, it's heavy. Helium, on the other hand, is floating around all over the place. So we have to look at it as an extension of energy and science. Now, different forms and shapes also have different vibrational frequencies. And crystals are the same way. They are just like every single thing else in the world. Organic matter does have a vibrational frequency because of the way it's constructed. So when we get back, we're going to talk about how crystals hold their frequency and how they're...
This is OTR FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Have you ever wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free today at ascendinghearts.com and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake.
The name is Bond. James Bond.
No, the name is Joe. The Joe Show. And we are returning back for our 9th season here on OMTimes Radio. So tune in every Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, on OMTimes.com/mobile. You can take us wherever you go. Yeah!
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of the Inspired Parenting Radio Show, where every week we bring you empowering information from the diverse fields of conscious parenting, education, neuroscience, consciousness, health, and metaphysics to support you in nurturing the best in your children. So if you're interested in understanding what shapes your children's minds, spirits, and hearts, join me every Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and prepare to be inspired.
Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
You're listening to OTR FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Structure. So, Here's how crystals work for you and me and everybody else. Think about it for a minute. Crystals have molecules that are arranged in fixed, repeating patterns, and they're geometrically perfect. So what happens is they have the lowest state of disorder. They're able to maintain their vibrational frequency much, much easier. So it stays high. It stays in good shape, and it stays consistent. Now, that's awesome. Now, what happens is that different stones have different frequencies. They're not all the same, just like not everybody else is the same. Some are good for certain things, and some are good for others. Now, why is it good for you and me? That's so easy. We are organic matter. And let's think about it. We are primarily water. There's nothing that is consistent in us other than the fact that we're all over the place all the time. Okay? Our moods change and shift constantly. We're affected by everything that's around us, whether it is weather, the moon, another person. We're going up and down constantly on our own frequency. We can be really, really happy one minute, and then somebody can come up and say something to us and just bottom us out immediately, 2 minutes later. We can't hold our vibrational frequency at all. It goes all over the place. So, up pops these beautiful crystals. They're holding and maintaining their level. They're staying in a high vibrational frequency. So what does that do? It helps raise ours up. See, when you have two objects that are vibrating, one is lower, one is higher, the lower one will raise up to meet the higher one. Now, vibrations are really, really fascinating. Unfortunately, you can't really do this experiment at home, even though I really wish you could because it's awesome. And you can probably find it somewhere on the internet. Let's say we have 5 cellos, and they're lined up in a row. Now, cellos obviously are a string instrument. They have a very beautiful, deep, rich tone. Now, none of these cellos are making a sound at all. But we're going to go to the one on the very far right side, and we're going to strike one of the strings, and it's going to vibrate. You know what's going to happen? The other 4 are going to do it too. They will pick up that vibrational frequency, and they will vibrate as well. So you see, when one has a frequency, it will help raise the others. Okay? So the higher the vibrational frequencies that a person has, or a stone, means that they're operating at a higher level. Now, to give you a, 1 minute explanation of vibrational frequencies, think about the movie Mary Poppins. I know you all saw it whenever you were a kid or raising kids. Now, in the movie, Mary and Bert take the kids to go see her uncle for a tea party. They start telling goofy jokes, and everybody starts laughing. And the more they laugh, the higher they float in the parlor. And they're laughing and laughing and laughing and floating higher and higher and higher. And then all of a sudden, Mary says, it's time to go home, children. And then everybody is bummed out, and they immediately sink, sort of crashing to the floor. It's the same way with vibrational frequencies. So the higher and happier we are, then we're going to be up there floating and in a good place. And then whenever we're down, we're going to drop down. But if we have the crystals around us, that will help us stay at a higher state. So we won't be bottoming out as much. But crystals are used in many, many, many different ways. Right now, you are using crystals, as am I. You've got them in watches. You're listening to a computer. You've got a cell phone. You're going to go later and watch your widescreen LED TV. Well, guess what? All crystals. Now, you may go home and you might play with your cat with the little laser pen. Who doesn't like playing with the cat with the laser light? Well, that laser light is actually made from ruby. We're using crystals in every aspect of technology. But it's hard to really relate that to what we're doing working with crystals now. Quartz is a great crystal. It is a silicon base, but what happens is that when it is compressed or when electricity connects to it, it is a great conductor and it will actually give out electricity. It's called piezoelectric. And so it helps generate its own energy. Now, when we're working with the crystals and we have them, Dr. Bruce Lipton, I know you've heard of him. He's got wonderful books. He's a brilliant guy. He wrote The Biology of Belief. And in that book, he even tells us that our DNA has the ability to examine the environment for relevant frequencies, and it can reshape itself accordingly. He says that the effects are multiplied if you consciously direct your atom's DNA and frequencies with purpose to move into resonance with a crystal's frequencies. So, what is he saying? You can change your DNA to something more positive by working with crystals. And let me tell you, in working with crystals for a long time, I have seen how it changes things. I was hit one time several years ago with a bad mammogram. And it was kind of terrifying because when I was 28 years ago, my father died of cancer. So, when you're 28, you lose your father, and then you find out, like around your 50s, there's something wrong. Then, you go to the best doctors you can find, which is what I did. And I went to MD Anderson Hospital in Houston because they're one of the best for cancer. But I also did my own work and my own, crystal healing work. So I got 2 crystals, a sapphire and a very powerful laser quartz. And I used those and I walked around the house and I would sit down and watch TV in the evenings or something, and I would have those 2 crystals in my hands doing Reiki on my breast. Because, I'm not taking any chances. I'm hitting all the bases here. Well, they decided to go and do a biopsy. They did the biopsy and they said, well, we can't really figure it out. So we need to do a lumpectomy. And so they, a few months later did the lumpectomy. And between all this, I'm still doing massive healing sessions with the crystals and the Reiki. By the time the lumpectomy was done, they decided that, they couldn't really determine what the status of these cells were. They weren't cancer or precancer or pre-precancer, but they weren't 100% normal either. So the consensus was, by my friends who do energy healing, was that it was going into something and then it reversed. The cells did not have the opportunity to go back to be 100% healthy because all of this was happening in a 6-month period. But they did clear out the damage so that they were healing and getting back normal. Now, ever since then, I have faithfully gone back and been tested, and I'm looking at now 6 or 7 years with nothing, no spots, no anything. Now, I very much believe that it had everything to do with working with the crystals and the energy. So it does work. I also had an instance where my foot was completely crushed, like hearing bones crack, kind of crushed. A horse stepped on me. And I came into the house, didn't even stop to get an ice pack. Came in the house, grabbed a couple of crystals, sat down, put my hands over my foot, and stopped after about 15 or 20 minutes, and I thought I was going to die because of the pain. Went back to the crystals and the energy work, about another 20 minutes. After that, I stopped. There was no pain, no bruising, and I did not have to go to the doctor, and I ended up going shopping all the rest of the afternoon. So, I know it works. I have so many instances with clients that it works. It makes a tremendous difference because it raises your frequency and helps your body heal the way that it should. Because sometimes when things are just, you've got some dark energy, you've got some blockages in there, then that slows you down on your healing. So when you have the crystals around, they're raising your vibrational frequency up higher, helping to get away from the negativity and the blockages. And that way, your body begins to start healing on its own naturally. Now, the more you work with the crystals, or if you're doing Reiki or any other type of energy healing, then it's going to heal quicker. And it's going to happen much, much faster. But it still gives you the opportunity to heal in a much better and quicker way than you would, naturally on your own. That's one of the biggest benefits of having them around. Not to mention, they're great for, like mood and emotions. They'll help you stay a lot more level. And anybody who's raised a teenage girl knows that that is important. When we get back, we'll talk about beginning your crystal journey.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
As difficult as it is to believe, there are places in Africa where human traffickers sell albino children and their body parts for use in magic rituals. Humanity Healing International is actively working in Uganda to change this paradigm. The Albino Rescue Project finds albino children who are at risk and places them in safe schools and environments where they can learn and grow free from fear. To learn more or to sponsor a child, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Hi, this is Sylvia Henderson, intuitive life coach and energy healer. Are you ready to elevate and rise way above your normal? Be sure to listen to my show, Intuitive Transformations, on OMTimes Radio, Sunday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern. Get the inspiration you need to transform your life.
Hello, I'm Miriam Knight of New Consciousness Review, inviting you to my new show where I interview the rising stars of the conscious awakening. We'll explore the many faces of consciousness and action and intriguing perspectives on life, the universe, and everything in between. Join us each Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern on the Rising Stars Show.
Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
You're listening to OTR-FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Hi, this is Terry Van Horn, and we're talking about the magic of crystals. Now, there's so much to get into with crystals that actually we could probably do a weekly show for the next 6 months and still not hardly repeat anything. But let's talk about how do you get started in working with crystals? It's like picking that first one. It's got to be intimidating. I actually had some that I don't even remember whenever I got them. But I do have crystals that I have owned for 35, 40 years. So, how do you pick that first one? Well, first of all, don't be intimidated by it. Um, Go someplace where the people have a little bit of knowledge and expertise about it. And if not, try to find somebody, even online, that you can communicate with a little bit and have them help you with your first selection. But hold different crystals, but hold one at a time. That's kind of the key. Put them in your dominant hand and just feel. Now, some aren't going to feel like anything. Some may make you feel all warm and fuzzy. Some will practically be jumping out of your hand because it's like, this is not a match. This just feels awful. And some, you're not going to feel anything at all. And that's okay. Now, one of the most important things that I can teach you about selecting your crystals is that, beauty is only skin deep. Some of the most powerful crystals and stones that I have are not necessarily the prettiest. We go with the energy that God gives us. Now, the other thing is that, in my personal opinion, and I do have all different sorts of stones, hundreds, thousands around here. My preference is a raw stone. Okay? Not tumbled, not polished, not cut and carved, even though I do have a lot of those. Okay? But if you're just getting started and you're going to get like a quartz crystal, which most people start with that one, get one that is natural. You're going to see so many amazing things when you look at that stone. When they're polished, it takes everything away from them. But when you look at that raw stone, you can see its personality, and they do have personalities. And I've got the different personalities listed in the book to tell you even more about your stone and its energy, which is really, really amazing. Now, as you're holding the stone, you feel the energy. Just sometimes you can just feel a tingling and buzzing that goes all through your body. But don't expect that all the time, because it doesn't always happen. But some stones may not be gorgeous, but it fits just right in your hand. Well, that right there, to me, is a big signal. If I just pick that stone up and it just kind of melts into my hand and they become one, well, that lets me know that right there that we kind of match up. If you don't know what you're doing, take a kid. Boy, kids are great, It's like they know how to pick crystals. Sometimes they'll start digging for a pretty one, but if you just tell them to close their eyes and pick one, they're always delighted with the one that they pick, the one that they choose, because now they're doing it energetically. And that's really the best way for you to choose your crystal is energetically. It's the one that makes you feel something, warm, cold, tingles, something. And, I did this, I experimented with the grandchild. I guess he was probably about 4 or 5 when we started doing this. And the first thing that he did that blew me away is that he would walk into my office, which is crystals everywhere. You can't move without tripping over one. And they're in boxes and containers and cases and everything. And the one stone that he picked up and brought to me and said that he wanted it, he said, this one is mine. This one belongs to me. So I'm like, okay, let's see which, piece he got. And he got one of the ugliest stones I own. But it was a bloodstone. Bloodstone is the stone for people who are born in March. And guess what? He's a March baby. Now, how did a kid who's 4 or 5 years old walk into a room with thousands of them and decide that that was the one? I mean, this was not a pretty stone at all. But, that was the one that he was drawn to. But then I would go and let him pick up different ones and tell me how they made him feel. And it was great because he could actually feel them better than I could in a lot of ways. Also, don't be worried or feel like there's something wrong with you if you don't feel a lot of sensations from stones. I don't with a lot of them, but, it's okay. I still kind of know which ones are, work for me and which ones don't. But, just test them out. See what feels right to you. Try several different ones. And, if you can do it by closing your eyes and choosing one, that's a great way. Because then you are picking them out energetically rather than on their appearance. Now, what can crystals do for you? It's a pretty good question. They can help you focus and amplify your own energy. Okay, so if you are working on something, or in my case, where I was doing the Reiki and the energy healing to try to take care of those cells that were not quite right, it amplified it and intensified that healing energy to help get rid of that. Same thing with healing the bones. Same thing with working with clients who have cancer or all sorts of different things. It amplifies that energy. Now, another thing they can do is help us so that we can relieve and just relax. Get rid of that stress. Release it. Let it go, which is wonderful. You get amethyst and rose quartz together, and you're just going to be completely chilled out. They can amplify our healing potential. Like whenever I've had a client who was in stage 4 prostate cancer and sent home to die. That was 4 years ago, and he's still around because we also did a lot of intense healing work with certain crystals. So it can really help you. Now, it can also help you not experience burnout as much. You can have energy. It will help with that. It helps with stimulating harmonious brain activity, getting those hemispheres in balance. It restores the energy structure of your body, which is another thing that's really important. It helps to amplify spiritual growth and even personal growth. It helps in a lot of different ways like that because it helps raise your frequency higher so that you can do more on a personal level. It helps you to reconnect with your higher self. Obviously, our higher self is our soul, and it vibrates at a much higher frequency than our body does. So when we work with crystals, it helps us to connect, not only with our higher self, but with our angels and our guides, because it starts raising our vibrational frequency much, much higher, and we can build on it. Now, it also helps to bring energy and information into our body on a cellular level and can help us to move forward with that. So whenever you're looking at crystals, you can go in with the intention of getting a particular stone, but be open-minded about it because there may be another one that just jumps off the table and, says, take me, take me. And I can't tell you how many times that's happened to me. I walked into a metaphysical fair one time that a friend had a booth at. And there were thousands of crystals and carvings and, ancient skulls and contemporary skulls and dragons and all sorts of stuff. I walk into this room and I saw what appeared to be a beam of light shining down on one particular piece. Now, there really wasn't a spotlight on this piece, but it was the only one I saw in the room. And I immediately went straight to it. And I was like, oh, I must have this now. all common sense, all everything totally went out the window. It was like there were spotlights on this one, and it had to come home for a reason. And it did, because I've done a lot of work with that particular stone. But they help us with different things that we need at the time. Maybe you do need to work with a specific stone now, and then later on, you don't need that one as much anymore, and you need to shift over to another one. That's okay. You can either pass the one on that you're not using anymore, or you can keep it for another time that you're using it. Stones are going to continue with their energy. Now, sometimes they do get a little cluttered up with negativity. Some will clear themselves. Others need a little bit of help with doing that. And a lot of people have asked me about cleansing and clearing their stones. And there are a lot of ways to do this. But I suggest a couple of ways that are guaranteed not to damage the stone. The first one is sage or incense. You go and you light your sage and you pass the stone through the smoke. That will clear the stone, and there's no risk to harm. The other thing is moonlight. Moonlight is a great way to cleanse and clear your stones, and even star energy. Or in most cases, like rain or storm help. Don't always put your stones in the sunlight. Some will fade in color with that, and they won't be nearly as bright or deep. Be careful about putting them in water. Salt water actually is very drying, and it can help brittle stones break. So we have to be very careful with how we do it, but cleansing them and recharging them helps tremendously. And when we get back, we're going to talk about some more ways to work with our stones.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Are you trying to get from point A to point B and need a little advice? Connect with the counselors at OMTimes Advisors. Whether you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual intuitive, the advisors participating at advisors.omtimes.com were carefully chosen based on their gifts, skills, and professionalism. OMTimes Advisors, connecting you with the best advisors in the business. Join Elliot Jolish, the business therapist, each Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern for the Elliot Jolish Hour, as he interviews business experts on your behalf. And you're invited to email your business questions to questions@ecjgroup.com for answers, live, on air every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on the Elliot Jolish Hour.
Hi. This is Angela Levesque, host of Entanglement Radio. Join me Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern for inspiring conversations with visionaries in spiritual science and conscious healing. Entanglement Radio, Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern. Transcendent talk for the conscious mind.
Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
You're listening to OTR-FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
This is Terry Van Horn, and we've been talking about the magic of crystals. And believe it or not, all this time that we've been talking, we're only into like chapter 3 of the book. So we haven't even touched the main things about the book. But I do want to tell you some different aspects about crystals, how you can use them to really help change and improve your life. Now, obviously, you can wear stones, and you do, and they will help with different aspects. If you connect with amethyst, that's going to help you on a spiritual level. You're going to be able to connect with your angels much more clearly. Now, how do you do that? Just when you're meditating, have one next to you, or, hold one. You don't have to do anything special. What if you're dealing with a lot of negativity? Lord knows there's enough out there. But great stones to use for that are generally the stones that are black. Black tourmaline, fabulous for protection of negativity. Obsidian, black obsidian, is wonderful. Hematite is wonderful for that, as well as dealing with pain. Now, shungite is another stone. This is like a miracle stone. Shungite is so awesome. And not only does it help with negativity, and it protects you from that, kind of transmutes it into love and light and just makes it dissipate. It also helps with electromagnetic frequencies. There's a lot of talk about that right now. There's also a lot of talk about, I've been reading several articles lately about cell phones, and are you getting radiation from cell phones and ultimately brain cancer? Kind of a big deal, something you might ought to think about. Well, I have a cell phone. I have to use one too, but I have a piece of shungite attached to it, and that shungite helps absorb all of that, and it helps protect me. I also have a piece of that and a couple of pieces of black tourmaline that are next to my computer. I have large chunks of black tourmaline on either side of my front gate. So if you want to come to my house and get onto my property, you have to go past these two big pieces of black tourmaline. So you kind of get your little energetic shower there when you're coming through. There are so many different stones that you can use for different purposes. You can do so many different things with them. When we have crystals around, we can help to create sacred space. We can help because it's raising the vibrational frequency of that area. We can help heal our chakras. Get those chakras realigned, get rid of those blockages by using stones that are associated with each chakra. And actually, it's pretty easy to do. Chakras are in colors. Get stones that are in those same colors. That's the easiest way in the world to do it. Nothing really to think about. You don't have to think about any of those strange long names. It's just match the colors. You can also do grids. You can create grids, which is basically laying stones out in a design. You give a kid a whole pile of stones, they're going to start drawing images on the floor or the table with their stones. That's what we do. We create grids, and you can do them where they're just beautiful, and they're very powerful. Whenever there's something special that I want to manifest, I'll write it down on an index card, put it underneath one of my really big generating crystals, and then put a whole bunch of smaller crystals around to attract even more energy. And what that does is it expands the energy for my goals and the things that I want to accomplish, sends it to the universe, and it helps me so that I can manifest it much more quickly. And it has never failed. Now, it has not done it always in the time frame that I personally thought it should be, but there are some things that I honestly just don't know, and sometimes the universe has a better plan. But it does help with that. There's so many different things that you can do. We have specific stones that help with prosperity and abundance. Obviously, pyrite. What better than fool's gold to carry around? But there are other ones. There is a stone called adventurine. And there is a saying about adventurine that if you carry a piece of that in your left pocket, you will never be without funds. So it's like there are so many different ways that you can use these stones. There are stones specific for certain issues. There are some that are specific for cancer. There are some that are specific for stomachache. Malachite, great for stomachache, stomach issues. We have crystals that are excellent for connecting with certain angels and guides. And then, of course, we just have that whole list of what could I not live without kind of crystals. And so I want to skip to that and tell you what I would choose if I could only have a handful of stones. Now, this is a very hard question for somebody like me. When you've got an addiction, you've just got an addiction. Yes, there are crystals for that, but I refuse to use them. So, if I could only have 10, I would have amethyst for spiritual awareness, meditation, and psychic abilities. I'd have adventurine for helping to build confidence, healing, vitality, growth, creativity, and imagination. I would have blue lace agate, which actually those mines are kind of closing now, so that would even be better to get a hold of that one. It's excellent for like every kind of healing possible and for connecting with our angels, but excellent for wounds and illnesses. Carnelian is all about energy flow and creativity, courage, and happiness. Citrine is also a happy stone, but it's also great for finances, prosperity, abundance, and confidence. Of course, clear quartz, because that's going to magnify everything else. Hematite for grounding and clearing, pain relief and protection. Lapis would be for psychic experiences, tapping into our inner power and purifying our soul and our thoughts. Rose quartz